Good morning. I hope you can hear me. I've said this before. I can never tell if my microphone's on or not. I don't know until it's all over. Um, I have a lot to talk about today because cinemas are just throwing stuff up on the screen, hoping to get people to come back. I don't know that people are coming back to the cinemas here. I only go to press screenings, so I don't. Whenever I go, the cinema, the movie that I see is full, subject to seating restrictions. But I never see other people go into other rooms. We all have multiplexes here. So I don't know that people are going to cinemas here. Anyhow, so I got three films to talk about. I wish I could, well, I'll get to it. The first film I want to talk about is called The War with Grandpa. Not the war against Grandpa. I don't know why. Do you go to war with somebody? No, the person you go to war with is your ally. The person you go to war against is your enemy. So why is this called The War with Grandpa? Well, it's because it's based on a book of the same name. But I'll get to that in half a second. What's going on with Robert De Niro? He's one of America, one of the world's greatest film actors ever, and seemingly he's decided to take a page out of Michael Caine's Notebook and accept any role that allows him to pay the rent. Now, De Niro's worth, I looked this up, it's been estimated at 500 million US dollars, a $500 million. So, he can't be hard up for cash, but maybe he is because he's got his ex-wife's monthly support payments to worry about. His two restaurants in New York recently closed down due to the pandemic. He's got his production company to worry about, and of course his Tribeca Film Festival. Who's sending me an email at this hour of the morning? Whatever the reason, he's back on the screen and he's playing another grandfather. Remember, we had that horrible film, Dirty Grandpa, back in 2016. But he's not horrible. He's actually a nice grandpa in this one. And he's in Tim Hill's film called The War with Grandpa. Now, Tim Hill, he did the SpongeBob franchise and Alvin and the Chipmunks. So this is the kind of movie that Tim Hill makes. So to say that he's back, though, isn't entirely correct because this movie was made a couple years ago and it's been sitting on a shelf until now. This was one of the Weinstein films, along with The Current War, which was here 6 months ago, 8 months ago, can't even remember now. And it got shelved due to Harvey Weinstein's legal battle over his rape and sexual assault charges, which ultimately landed him in jail. This film was bought by 101 Studios. I think both films, in fact, were bought by 101 Studios, and was supposed to be released last month in September. It then got pushed back to October the 9th in the US and yesterday here. So that's why I'm talking about it now. So as I said, The War with Grandpa was based on a book. It was written in 1984 by Robert Kimmel Smith, who passed away earlier this year, just before his 90th birthday. I read recently that he had been suffering from Alzheimer's for quite a few years. So, too bad. Now, the book is very, very popular with kids all over English reading kids who read English. I suppose I was going all over the world, but probably not. Certainly North American kids. I never read it though. I guess it's after my time. It tells the story of Peter, who's a tween-age boy, like 12-ish-year-old boy, who has to give up his bedroom to his grandfather when the old man moves in with the family. Now, unhappy being relegated up to the attic. That's really weird because you think a 12-year-old kid would want privacy, seclusion, attic works. So, but Peter's unhappy being relegated up to the attic and he declares war on his grandfather, hoping that the old man will move out and he can get his old bedroom back. Now, De Niro plays Grandpa Ed. He's a jovial old guy. He's not at all like the guy in the Zac Efron film from a few years back. He's a jovial old guy whose daughter Sally, played by Uma Thurman. Do I have to tell you who Uma Thurman is? You know. And she insists that he move into their home after he does what many people his age and even younger do. He backs his car over a mailbox. Okay, he does a few other things, but you know what? He backs his car over a mailbox. Big deal. When my great uncle was 83, he turned a Shoppers Drug Mart pharmacy into a drive-through. I remember that time. I said to him, Uncle Harry, do you really, maybe it's time you need to give up your license. I think he drove for a few more years after that. But anyhow, As in the book, Peter, who's played here by Oakes Fegley, he was in Wonderstruck and Pete's Dragon, he gets kicked upstairs to join the resident birds and mice, and barely a night goes by before he's pranking Ed by substituting the old man's shaving cream for fast-drying foam sealant. He's messing with his morning coffee and favorite cookies, and he's gluing his marble jar to his dresser in what is probably the longest walk to a punchline ever. You know, that joke had a huge setup, and then when it finally was, when it finally went out, it sort of landed with a thud, sort of like his marble jar. But anyhow, Ed, he's up for the challenge, and he dishes out the hurt as good as he gets it. Now their antics come to a head as Peter's little sister's Christmas in September at his little sister's Christmas in September birthday party. And I'm not going to get into that. You can watch the film, or you can watch the trailer. Either way. Now, while the original story has been updated by the screenwriting team of Tom J. Assel, oh, if my last name was Assel, I would change it, and Matt Ember, these guys also wrote the screenplays to Get Smart and Failure to Launch, the Matthew McConaughey film from a few years back. So now this film includes such modern amenities as mobile phones, a drone, and video games, none of which were around when the book was written. But they forgot one recent innovation that could have solved this whole matter: a tiny home. You know, I kept watching this film going, get a tiny home, problem solved, you know. Now, with the money Ed would have received from selling his house, he could have built a rather swish granny flat, that's what people call them, in Sally's backyard, and everyone would have been happy. Instead, the guys call a truce and agree to get along with the status quo until, it would seem from the final scene, Ed finds someone his own age to spend some time with, and that leaves Peter something new to whine about. So, is the sequel being planned for this film? Oh, please, I hope not, but I have a feeling it is. Maybe, with the pandemic, you never know these days. Now, while the book may be much loved, it is much loved, let's be honest, this film is completely lacking in wit and humor, with the exception of one mildly amusing scene about a diaper, which is in the trailer, by the way. So, you're in trouble when the best line in the film is in the trailer. There's little to laugh at here. Fegley, who looks like a prepubescent Emma Stone, although I heard he's 15, so maybe he was he was probably 13 when he made the film. He plays Peter as an obnoxiously self-entitled brat. There was nothing redeeming about this kid. I mean, if I was the grandfather, I would have done a hell of a lot worse than what Grandpa Ed did. He was a good guy in my books. Now, my father certainly would have taken me out back and used a belt on my backside if I had pulled half the stunts that kid pulled on Ed. Instead, Peter gets grounded for 6 months. I would have signed the kid up as a volunteer, as a lifetime volunteer, at a seniors assisted living center, instead of just grounding him for 6 months. Now, De Niro, fortunately, here's the good part about the film. He fortunately earns his big paycheck. He's actually quite good in this film. The film is horrible, but he's okay. And he's helped by a vastly overqualified cast for such a misguided film that includes his fellow Deer Hunter alumnus Christopher Walken. They did the Deer Hunter 40 years ago, so it's nice to see them together again, and this is a comedy, well, supposedly a comedy. Cheech Marin is also in the film, and Jane Seymour, who was Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. And of course, Somewhere in Time, which is a hugely popular film here in Hong Kong. And of course, Thurman. So, it has an amazing cast for such a crappy film. But anyhow. Now, The War with Grandpa opened here yesterday. And unless you're a spoiled 12-year-old brat who thinks the world owes you something, you can safely skip this film and sleep well at night. That's called The War with Grandpa. Read the book. I don't know. Crappy film. Shameful. Okay, second film I want to talk about, which also opened here yesterday, is called The Doorman. Now, this seems to be the week in Hong Kong for once well-respected actors to throw their hard-earned reputations into the dumpster and opt for the paycheck instead. Here, instead of Robert De Niro, we have Jean Reno. He's French, but I think he was born in Morocco, but maybe he calls himself French. He probably lives in Paris these days. So here we have Jean Reno, who plays an erudite art thief in this highly derivative film. These guys collect the paycheck. So here's what the story is about. Now, after surviving an unexplained attack, we never learn why there was this attack, that kills the U.S. Deputy Chief of Mission in Bulgaria. It's funny. I sort of remember the opening title card said Bulgaria, but the film is made in Romania, and my colleague James in his review said it was Romania where the action took place. But I remember Bulgaria. Doesn't matter. Bulgaria, Romania, potato. So after this unexplained attack, Marine Sergeant Ali Gorski, who's played by Ruby Rose, people would know her from The Meg and John Wick Chapter 2 and one of the Fast and Furious films, which I've never seen. Not one, and don't plan to see the next one, or the final two. And she's also TV's, well, she was, I think she left. She was TV's Batwoman. She leaves the service, the military service, and returns home to New York City. Now, to help her get over her PTSD, her uncle gets her a job working as a doorman in an upscale Manhattan apartment. The building is undergoing extensive renovation, and all the residents have moved out, all except an elderly couple who live on the first floor, and a young widower and his 2 kids who live on the 10th. Now, why a building that's only has two, so there's the couple and the father and the 2 kids. So it's 5 residents. Why a building needs 2 doormen? Because there already is a doorman there. So why it needs 2 doormen, I have no idea. But anyhow, now, no sooner has Allie put on her well-fitting uniform for someone who must be, well, in fact, I think she is 5 foot 6 inches and weighs all of about 110 pounds on a heavy day, and the uniform fits perfectly, Then a group of well-armed thieves led by the suave Victor Dubois, who's Renault. I love it because it goes, "My name is Victor Dubois." I mean, everybody burst out laughing with that line. They arrive over the Easter holiday looking for some pricey artwork that is hidden inside the walls of the building for 30 years. And now Allie has to use all of her military training to save the building's few residents, some of whom just happen to be her own family. Now let's see, we have a weapons-experienced loner battles a foreign adversary and his heavily armed gang who take over a high-rise over a holiday weekend, intending to break into a vault that contains valuable merchandise. In the process, they take hostages that include the loner's family. Now, where have we seen that before? Oh yeah, this film is a shameless ripoff of the first Die Hard film, right down to the fire alarm scene and the use of a dumbwaiter shaft instead of an elevator shaft. Or I think, was it an elevator shaft or was it a air duct? I can't remember. But this is such a ripoff, and not even a good ripoff. Now, the thing is, Ruby Rose is no Bruce Willis. Now, even though the actress, she's Australian by the way, the Australian actress is an amateur boxer apparently, her fight choreography skills are laughable. Director Ryuhei Kitamura, he did The Midnight Meat Train and a few other films. He must have realized during the filming that she's completely useless. And so he instead resorts to quick cuts, bad lighting, and shaky camera work to hide her ineptness. Ineptitude? Ineptness? One of those words. I don't know what's the difference between ineptness and ineptitude. Anyhow, when even that doesn't work, he brought in a stunt actor who, if you watch very carefully, doesn't even look like the actress. There was one scene I went, that's not her. You just look at her and you go, that's not her. So now perhaps even worse than the acting and the directing is the script. Or as one of my colleagues says, the script, because it's terrible. Written by Lior Heifetz and Joe Swanson, who collaborated on the 2019 Israeli film Sky Raiders. Lior Heifetz is Israeli, by the way. The pair seemingly doesn't know anything about American culture. Now, what family gets together to celebrate Easter over dinner? Christmas? Sure. Thanksgiving? Yeah, of course. Easter? I've never, the beginning of the film is like, hey, what are you doing for Easter? Hey, your family getting together for Easter? I've never heard anybody say those words. What are you doing for Easter? But, Passover, okay, but Easter, no. Okay, but even that contrivance pales in lameness compared to some of the lines that Renault is forced to say, like, "My name is Victor Dubois." The audience was in stitches over some of the things he had to say. I can, there were some of them. Again, I said this the other day with another film that I honestly, I wanted to turn my phone on to write it down, but, people around me would have been pissed off. The lines were so bad. And you know what? And why did Dubois' gang bring along assault weapons when they thought the building would be empty? They didn't know that these two families would be there. So, they're assuming it's just going to be, and they didn't even know she was a doorman. So it's just going to be the one doorman looking after a whole building. So why do they need, this cache of arms for a building that they expected to be empty? And finally, let's talk about the building's title, the doorman. She's a woman. Don't we call these people concierges now? Although if you call the films a concierge, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue the way the doorman does. Now, in a pre-pandemic world, the doorman would have gone directly to DVD, but in this world, it opens in our cinemas. And I said it opened yesterday. This is easily one of the dumbest films you'll see this year. This is easily one of the dumbest films I've seen this year, and it might even end up on my least liked films of 2020. What year is this? 2020. The Doorman. Terrible. Terrible. I call it Die Hardly. Okay. Finally, last film I want to talk about today is, take a breath, it's called Follow Me. Or in other markets, it's called No Escape. So here it's called Follow Me. Now, as I said, our cinemas are open, but finding anything to put on the screen, anything decent, anything worth watching to put on the screen so far into this pandemic is proving to be the ultimate challenge. The distributors have really scraped, they are, I don't want to say they're scraping, they've scraped that barrel bottom, the bottom of the barrel. And, it's beginning to look like if a studio can hold on to a film, all these big budget, big name films, they're going to hold on as long as they can. Otherwise, if a film is halfway worth watching, it'll go to one of the streaming services. So that leaves the cinemas with films that would normally go directly to DVD. That's what we're getting, and that's what we got this week, is 3 films that would have gone direct to DVD in an otherwise non-pandemic world. Now, what this film is about, it's about a guy named Cole who's played by Keegan Allen, who was in TV's Pretty Little Liars. I must admit, it's a TV show I've never even heard of, but it was on TV for like 7 years. So he is a very successful vlogger in the vein of Logan Paul, who has built a following of millions of fans around the world who watch his adrenaline-charged exploits on his video channel. Now, for his channel's 10th anniversary, his best friend Dash, played by George Janko, no idea who he is, he decides to organize a special trip to Moscow for Cole. And there, Dash's old and mega-rich friend Alexei, played by Ronan Rubinstein, who's in a new TV show called 911 Lone Star, starring Rob Lowe. Never heard of it. He has built, like a sneeze, he's built a private escape room like no other. Now, coming along for this experience are Cole's friends Thomas, played by Denzel Whitaker, who had a small role in Black Panther. Well, there's Sam, who's played by the rapper Sia. Not Sia the singer, this is Sia, S-I-Y-A. She's a rapper, apparently. I've never heard of her. And Cole's girlfriend, Erin, who's played by Helen Rodin, who was in TV's Teen Wolf, another film I never watched. But she was in it for its whole, I think, 7 years she was in it, something like that. Now, once in Moscow, the Americans are blown away by Alexei's first-class treatment, but their mood quickly changes once inside Alexei's escape room located deep within a former KGB prison. And no sooner do Cole and his friends solve the puzzles and barely get out alive than the game takes a really deadly turn. As if it wasn't deadly enough before, then it gets really deadly. Now, Follow Me is not only highly reminiscent of the 2017 film Escape Room, it even contains footage from that film. And as I was watching the credits, I was saying to my colleague, "God, this is just like Escape Room, but worse." And look, there's even footage, But as I found out later, both films are written, directed, and produced by Will Wernick. So if try, if you don't succeed the first time, try again. But that's not where the similarity ends, though. Follow Me also rips off elements of Hostel from 2005, Saw from 2004, and even a certain long-running reality TV show that I will not mention its name because that would be a spoiler. But if you should happen to see this film, you will know which TV show I'm talking about. Now, lovers of blood and gore will salivate over this film with plenty of both on view as Cole and his friends make their way through Alexi's Chamber of Horrors. However, even the most sadistic of us will find Follow Me a real slog because it's paced so slowly. I just it's like a 92-minute film, and it's like the longest 92 minutes you're going to spend in a while. And it wears thin early on as we're subjected to scene after scene after scene after scene of Cole gaping in fear and incredulity as his friends are picked off one by one. That's not a spoiler. In a film like this, he's going to be the last man standing, and the friends get picked off one by one. Usually the colored folks first. I'm saying that facetiously, of course, but it's true in this film. The film may have been more interesting if Cole had peed in his pants, but that didn't happen. Oh well. Now, just as I said with The Doorman, in a pre-pandemic world, Follow Me would have gone directly to DVD. But, even so, there's a market for schlock like this film. To be honest, this is really only for the desperate or for those who take long-distance buses in Thailand. It's crap. It's real crap. So that's Follow Me. So we have 3 films this week. All of them are garbage. All of them do not deserve your money. Stay home. Or watch something on Netflix. I'm going to watch a few things on Netflix next week. I have a couple of other cinema films to talk about. It's even the 2 films next week that I'm going to see in the cinema, I have very low expectations for. Well, one of them, medium expectations. The other one, very low expectations. Oh, we'll see. Anyhow, have a good weekend. Have a good week. Do I have to say it again? Wear your mask when you're in public. Don't fight it. Wear it. Okay. See ya.